All right, everybody, welcome back to Stocks at Bat. The numbers today is Thursday. Markets are closed tomorrow. We got holiday weekend, but I wanted to do a quick update on a stock that, as you see, is moving a chunk here today. Name of the company, Aker Carbon Capture, ticker symbol AKCCF, listed here on the OTC, the over-the-counter market. We looked at this stock maybe a little over a week ago. It was about 8-9 days ago, and I mentioned that, in my opinion, it was probably going to keep dropping. I was personally looking for this one-year fib at 46. And I also said that it could potentially, if it continues this trend, we could potentially see even the high 30s, maybe 38, 39 cents or whatever. But I said that if you could, you want to try to keep an eye on the stock and have it find the bottom and establish the bottom, and then that's when you could potentially step in. Now, I appreciate the fact it's all hindsight, and we know that OTC stocks could be very, very difficult to time and call, so unfortunately it didn't happen to work out precisely to the exact cent that we spoke about. However, I just want to show you that we broke the bottom trend line. I think we did a video like right here at about 56 cents and change, right as it hit that fib. And again, I said, in my opinion, wait for it to find the bottom and then try to take a position if you can. And you can see that was on Tuesday the 19th. And then you can see Wednesday we were red again, basically dropping a little bit lower, but kind of staying in the same range. And then you can see Thursday we were down again to new lows. Friday we were down again to new lows. But then you see Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the stock bouncing off those lows, finding the bottom, and then actually going green. And not only is it going up, but over the days it is kind of maintaining that little bump up in value. So in my opinion, again, it's all hindsight, but in my opinion, if I was looking to step into that situation and I see it drop to 49.5 cents and then have the bounce and kind of remain stable for a couple of days, in my opinion, that was the time to strike. Now, again, I understand it's all hindsight, but, you know, remember, the more of these examples that you see and that you look at, hopefully the more experience you'll gain, and it'll obviously better you in the long run. But as you see, the stock kind of found that bottom, hung out in the low to mid 50-cent range, and then boom, we got the news today. Stock sitting here at 72 cents, up 17.75 cents, up 32.75%. Schlumberger SLB merging carbon capture business with Aker Carbon Capture. U.S.-based oilfield services company SLB entered into an agreement to merge its carbon capture business. The companies are aiming to expedite industrial decarbonization at scale through the transaction. The deal entails SLB paying 4.12 billion Norwegian kroner. I'm seeing articles calling them kroners and others calling them crowns, so my apologies to any Norwegians out there. Please don't take it personally. For an 80% stake in Aker Carbon Capture, which holds the Norwegian carbon capture tech company, SLB will then contribute its own carbon capture business to the combined entity. Over the next 3 years, SLB will also make payments of 1.36 billion kroner, subject to the performance of the enlarged business. Following the transaction, Schlumberger will own 80% of the combined entity, while Aker will hold the remaining 20% stake. Completion is expected by the end of the second quarter of 2024, subject to regulatory approval. So that would mean a couple of more months, right? The end of the second quarter is, maybe 3 months and change from this point right here. So while this is very good news, and of course you had a nice big pop here in the stock, in my opinion, because we've been in this long-term descending wedge, and now, again, we had the flash break, and boom, we had the news to come right back to it. In my opinion, we may continue to run off of this momentum, and you could see 80 plus cents. We'll look at stock charts. That's right back to the moving average, basically, in the low to mid 80-cent range. And maybe even more, right? You could see 90 cents potentially off of this news. However, because it's still going to take a couple of months for the deal to actually finalize, in my opinion, we may actually kind of stay down in this range and could potentially even retest the bottom trend line here in the low 60-cent range. Again, as you see, going into maybe July or August, right? So we may not see more momentum and a run in the stock until the next couple of months when the deal is actually finalized. But in the moment, this seems to be very good news in my opinion. And again, we almost got back to this 20-day moving average. Looks like about 75.5 cents. Stock hit 75 cents. So I guess they could technically chalk it up as a retest of the 20-day moving average right there. But the stock, more importantly, in my opinion, is now back above this bottom trend line of this channel. So in my eyes, that's a good sign. And that's why even moving forward, even if it like just slowly rides the bottom of the range and does drop into the 60s, back potentially into the higher 50s even, in my opinion, it is the hold of this bottom trend line now that is key. Because, again, it's technically not bad news, and we were looking at the growth of the company as well. They had a nice EPS beat last quarter. Over the years, revenue has essentially been doubling, basically, year over year, from 21 to 22 to 23, and even the last several quarters as well, the revenue has been climbing, along with the loss narrowing as well. So that's why, in my opinion, over the longer term, this stock probably will be fine. However, we know that anything can happen. So in my opinion, if it does happen to break the trend line and start dropping down into the low 60s and the low 50s again, it could potentially just be dropping down to set up a double bottom here before it explodes and goes back up to 80, 90 cents. So unfortunately, over the course of about the next 3 months, kind of anything can happen. But again, over the longer term, in my opinion, this does seem like some pretty decent news here for AKCCF. And I wanted to look at the pivot points as well, because this is why I look at these pivot points, and I look at the fib levels, and I look at a lot of trend lines, because I try to look for some specific bounces or price ranges where the stock could pop or drop to. And even though I mentioned the 1-year fib of 46 cents, and then I personally said maybe you can see like 38, 39 cents if it breaks that level. As you see here, what happened is this bottom support level here of 50 cents is exactly where the stock went to and then found the bottom and bounced. It hit 49.5 cents and then immediately bounced and got right back up above this support level. And then again, you can see we kind of hung out for a couple of days here, and then we had the explosion today. So this is why, again, it could be very, very hard to time, and I understand it's all hindsight. So I'm not trying to like double back and cover my ass supposedly, but this is why I like to look at all of these points, because again, it is very, very difficult to time. But when you see a point like that, I literally said have it find the bottom and then potentially look to step in. And the problem is when you're dealing with stocks hitting all-time lows or even all-time highs, right? Look at a situation like SMCI. Perfect example. Once a stock runs up and chunks into these new all-time highs, usually new all-time highs, not really new 52-week highs. But when you see a stock just consistently running like that, and now it's trading at new all-time highs, that is where the term, quote-unquote, uncharted waters comes from. And we don't necessarily know exactly where the top will be, exactly where the bottom will be. SMCI, great example. I predicted 1,300 by the time it got listed on the S&P, and it hit like 1,230 and then started to sell off. And then I believe they did like a small offering, so the stock's been hanging out at around 1,000. But again, that's what happens. And on the downside, it's the same exact situation. We didn't know where the bottom was, so we have to try to wait and see if we can get some sort of support and some sort of bounce to try to show us potentially where the bottom is. And if you happen to buy in here in the low 50s, obviously, congratulations, you're up about 40%. But also on the flip side, that's why I always say as well, in my opinion, you should piece your way in instead of going all in. Because if you bought some shares here off of that bounce at 52, 53 cents, as you see, you're up today. But on the flip side, if it decided to break back down and drop to that 46 cent level, well, it's like we always say, If I piece my way in and I liked it up at 53, 54 cents, then I'm going to love it down here at 45 or 46 cents, wherever it goes. So that's why, again, I always say, in my opinion, you should never really go all in because you never know what's going to happen. And even a situation like today, a lot of people could be piling in off of this news, but like I said, we could easily start to sell off. We could, retest a level like this support level here of 64 cents. And again, in the moment, it may not make sense, but we have to take what the market gives us. But as you see here as well, you can see the 50-day moving average on the daily is 83 cents. Next pivot point, 84 cents, which is why I was saying, in my opinion, we could potentially continue to rally off of this momentum and get back to the 80s. Oh, wait, 1 second. RSI, as you see, was sub 20, really was absolutely destroyed, and then it found that bottom, it bounced, the RSI started to pop up. So that's what I mean. Again, I know it's difficult, and I know it's going to take more time and more experience for a lot of people to see a lot of these moves, but it is what it is. We live and we learn. But as you see now, the RSI on the daily up to about mid-range here at 52. But of course, could keep going to that 70 plus benchmark. And of course, we had the MACD that was falling for about the last 3 months and change. And we can see that the MACD has now recently crossed to the upside on this news. And the last time it crossed to the upside, you can see it kind of went into this upward consolidation zone. So unfortunately, the same thing could happen. We could kind of flatten out and slightly rise up into the 80s before potentially breaking back down to the 70s and the 60s moving forward. However, in my opinion, we should really continue up a little bit off of this momentum. Let's check the weekly, see if we see anything. Yeah, see on the weekly, the bottom support was 39. So in my opinion, that was like the low of the lows, right? That was like worst case scenario. So that's why I said in the last video, if it does continue to sell off, look for the potentially high 30-cent range and look for that market cap, in like the mid 200 million range. But obviously the stock didn't get that low. But we could also see here on the weekly, our next pivot point is 85 cents, the recent support level that it broke down through. So that's why I'm saying that 83, 84, 85 cent range seems to be a pretty pertinent level here for the stock. So we could potentially see that run back into the 80s, and you could even potentially see this 50-day moving average as well on the weekly here of 108. Let's see, that's still in the range, right? Look at that. Look at that. So, I mean, if it happens immediately, yeah, that 108, that's right there, I mean, it could technically get back to that dollar plus range. But again, as I mentioned, they said that the deal would not fully be finalized until after Q2 of 24, which is technically in a couple of months. And that's why I'm just saying, I'm just giving a heads up. If we jump back up to like that 85, 86 cent level and we hang out there at the moving averages and then it decides to break and pull back and ride along this bottom trend line, as you see, you could be looking potentially at the mid to low 60s again. So, I just want to give you a heads up of some potential short-term volatility that could happen. But overall, Aker Carbon Capture, AKCCF, having a great day on Schlumberger SLB, now taking an 80% stake in the company. And again, I just want to go on record. I know it's an OTC stock, so I know it's very, very, very difficult to try to time the pricing and the timing. But in general, this is what I always say when I look at these stocks, the way I do anyway, personally, in my opinion. I like to make sure the market cap isn't too heavily overinflated. If there's a PE, let's try to see if it's not, to the moon already and it's not like 88 or, 127. Let's look for a realistic number, hopefully. And also, more importantly, you want to see the growth in revenue. This is what I've been preaching. In my opinion, follow the revenue, follow the money, and chances are it could more than likely work out for you down the road. And again, there's an OTC stock, so even with the growing revenue, there were a couple of negatives attached to it we spoke about in the previous video, and the stock, like I said, happened to flash crash below this trend line and hit new lows, right? So That's what I mean. When it comes to certain stocks, anything can happen. But overall, we were looking at stocks like, obviously SMCI has consistent growing revenue, right? So the stock has been consistently climbing. But think about a smaller cap one as well that we looked at recently after earnings, Hims and Hers, right? Him and Hers. Ticker symbol HIMS, HIMS. Stock was what, like 10, 11? They came out with a great quarter. They've been consistently beating. I think the stock went up to like 13 and change. I did an earnings update video. I said, in my opinion, this is going to keep going, right? The revenue's consistently increasing. The profits are consistently rising and climbing. So if we follow the revenue, then we have a very good chance to be successful. And if we pull up HIMS right now, we can see again, look, this was right after earnings. And as you see, it popped right there to about 12. I mentioned a potential bull flag. I don't know if I mentioned it in the video or in the Discord, but I said, in my opinion, there's a $20 stock. This should keep going. And look, after earnings, it consistently kept climbing, hitting highs of 17.16 before having a slight pullback. So, not to analyze this, but in my opinion, it may, flatten out or continue to sell off. It'll probably meet up with this 20-day moving average, maybe somewhere around here, this key level of maybe around 14.5, and then it should technically bounce and run up back to new highs in the 17s and in the 18s. And the reason why it's doing so well is because the market cap to revenue comparison is not completely out of whack, but also look at the growth in revenue year over year and quarter over quarter. By following the growth of revenue, in my opinion, you increase your chances of being successful. But that's just me. That's just the way I look at it. But yeah, I'm very happy for a lot of you shareholders out there, because I'm sure a lot of you may saw that it's a carbon capture company, so you got excited. Maybe you took a position at, like the low $1 and you've been down. Or on the flip side, again, you've been looking maybe at the rising revenue that they've been bringing in, but the stock has been trending down. So you've been accumulating a position, consistently averaging down, and the stock has basically been dropping for years. So the fact that now you have Schlumberger taking a big stake in the company, looking to combine these entities to make it more profitable, more efficient, in my opinion, I'm very, very happy for you guys. And I think this is the type of news that something like an AKCCF needed for its shareholders. And again, shout out to any of you who are holding it. Very happy for you guys. And I'm going to end it there, because there's really nothing else to say. So once again, this is Stocks by the Numbers. I want to thank you guys for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually very quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel, right? And also, more importantly, if you can, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky and volatile and very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. I hope everyone has a great holiday weekend if you celebrate it. If not, I want you to have a great weekend too. Thanks for stopping by. You guys take it easy.